Good evening, and you're very welcome to episode 13 of season 5 of the League of Ireland Women's podcast here on FinalWhistle.ie with myself, Avenir, and of course, as ever, Aaron Clark, fresh from his little journey to Cork, on top of a journey to Turkey. We're going to be talking mostly about the women's national team for the next hour or so, of course, with a little bit of the All-Ireland Sports Cup at the weekend. The third round promises chaos. 15 teams out of 16 with mathematical possibilities of getting through to the next stage of the competition. It's going to be absolute bedlam this weekend. But Aaron, how has your week been? You've been globetrotting all ends of the continent.
Yeah, just before I go in and talk about my week, an interesting oversight just of the start of the podcast. The All-Ireland Sports Cup. You've got another new name for it this week.
Is that what I call it?
We don't know what they call it these days. It was good. Turkey was interesting. They don't use seatbelts by the looks of things over there, and half the city was shut down on Saturday when I was over there. But it was good. It was interesting. Different culture, different experience. The highlight, probably one of the highlights for me, had to be on the way to the Ireland game on Friday evening. I got an Uber out from the city. It's probably about 35 minutes out. And my Uber driver couldn't speak English, but he was using Google Translate, asking us why we were coming out here. It's very rural. And we explained to him, and then he got out of his car, didn't even know there was a football stadium there. I was like, okay, interesting. It was quite a remote area. It was a second division team, quite a bit outside of Istanbul, but it was nice. Then obviously doing the up and back to Cork yesterday it's always difficult on the old body having to sit in the car for 6 hours. I only said to you off air, when you do the traveling to Dublin and stuff like that for games, or you're traveling around for games, I now understand what the other side looks like.
You've no idea how lucky you are when you're in Dublin. Everything's on your doorstep. I was there for 10 or 15 years. I know all about it. It's a trek, even if I'm less than 2 hours from the M50, but it can be a trek. Talk to me about Turkey though, because we'll talk about football in a minute. Probably a game to forget other than the final minute when Emily Murphy got a great goal. And I want to talk about her as well, because I've probably been a bit hard on her on the show over the last maybe 18 months until last night. And it's the first time I've actually seen, this player actually is international quality. And she showed some minutes of brilliance, I thought, at stages yesterday. But talk to me about Istanbul, because I've been there. It's a lovely city. Did you get to see anything? Did you get to cross into Asia, cross the bridge at all?
The only time I went into Asia was when we were flying in, because we flew into the Asian side and then we crossed the big bridge across into the European side. Done a boat trip along the sea and all, just to sort of got out seeing everywhere. Went to seeing some of the mosques, got to see a whole lot of the places. Was in the Blue Mosque and all. I got to see the whole lot of the place. Used it as an advantage to have a bit of a holiday or a break as well. One of the funny parts was, like, even at the game, there was more riot police with the Ireland fans than there was Ireland fans, and a friend of mine was talking to them, and they were sort of saying it's their lowest level of security. But for us, you'd be like, if you see one riot police at a women's soccer game, you'd be wondering what's going on. No, listen, I loved it. I'd go back again. I'd go back again. I've been lucky. If you look at, like, in the last couple of years, I've been to Slovenia, Slovakia, Budapest, been all over the place. Within Europe.
Your holidays are decided by UEFA. I love it. No, but Eastern Europe, you talk about kind of maybe the lack of atmosphere and the amount of riot police. I remember going to a game on one of my escapades into Eastern Europe, Partizan Belgrade. I can't even remember who they were playing, but I remember coming in and I was a little bit late because I just got in, and I went straight to the ground and the place was packed, but it was packed with riot police. But the atmosphere was electric, and you needed them. It was intimidating, but you absolutely need them. It's a different level to what we're used to here.
Absolutely. And do you know what? And now time during the trip that I feel unsafe. And, like, you talk about atmospheres, I didn't get an official attendance, but I think the main camera for the game on Friday was in the main stand, and across from us there was a bunch of Turks, and they had, like, drums and all, constantly banging the drums and stuff like that. And it was nearly as if, it felt as if from being in the stadium that you're at one of these sort of games where you got a very good atmosphere. Because the one thing you will say when you go to some of these sort of cities with women's football is there's times where you don't get an atmosphere, you don't get really anything. It's the Ireland fans maybe screaming a little bit that creates something like. But the Turks, they never stopped for the entire game, and it was one of them that you were sort of like, the longer it went on, you were nervous and you were like, okay, this crowd is helping them and helping them and helping them. But it was a great atmosphere. You did say, you know, got lucky. The way I described it was we used the get out of jail free card, and me and you were sort of talking after the game and about like, and I don't even think people realize the consequences if Ireland had lost that game, in the sense of the Slovenia game would have been to even just stay in second place. And like, it was one of them that the football started okay, then it was just, don't know what happened, couldn't put a pass together after starting well, and that's probably the most frustrating thing. And like, everybody sort of, I've seen a couple of tweets where it's like, oh, Carla Ward this, Carla Ward that. I've no complaints over, like, Carla Ward's made some mistakes in this campaign. She's held her hands up and said that. But like, if a player can't pass a ball or can't execute a simple pass, a lot of that is on them. It's not on managers in that sort of sense. There's a certain element you can blame the managers, but like, Friday was very, very sloppy. You look at the first half in particular, there was a pass where they took a short goal kick and they passed around the back, and then all of a sudden Anna Patton passes the ball out of play, you know, from inside her own box, and you're sort of thinking to yourself,
and it wasn't even there was someone there. There was absolutely nobody there. It was just a pass to nothing to the sideline. 760 the official attendance according to the BBC. Does that seem about right, or is that a bit low?
I would say that'd probably be about right. That could probably be about right. And like, they were definitely very noisy. And for a small little ground, it was like a little League of Ireland ground. It was a mini version of Tala. I'd say it probably held about half of what Tala held, and it was like, it was good atmosphere because it was the way it was all, not necessarily caged in, but the way the roofs were. And like, the Turks made a real go of it. And like, you'd have to wonder from an Irish viewpoint, like, these are the sort of games that, like, nobody's had it easy away in Turkey. Slovenia struggled, Greece struggled. Like, it was one of them that I don't know what really we expected going out there. Yes, we wanted to win, but I thought it would be difficult, but I didn't think it'd be that difficult.
Yeah, it wasn't a great performance. Let's talk about the game itself. We probably dominated the early exchanges without ever really threatening, and then all of a sudden we find ourselves 1-0 down with a bit of a breakaway goal, and we didn't really look like getting back in. Now it was funny. I'm going to out myself here, but I texted you at some point about the Megan Campbell long throw strategy, and yeah, it's a weapon, but it's never worked for us. And I think I texted you at one stage saying, when was the last time we actually scored from a long throw? And was it 30 seconds, 60 seconds later, the ball's in the back of the net?
Yeah, it was literally within a minute, a couple of minutes, you text me, and like, I was even thinking back that, and like, yes, we've had success in previous years, and I'm going to flip forward to Slovenia for a second, because we mentioned Megan Campbell's long throw, and we'll go back to Turkey in a second. I had to laugh last night. The FAI removing the advertising hoardings at the end, at the corners of the goal box, where Megan would take the long throws just to make sure she had enough room. Joanna Reardon, journalist, tweeted last night saying she nearly started a run up in Ballincollig. It was nearly that far back, and like, the one from Megan, like, it was a difficult ball in, and you got that bit of luck, and then even with Ireland pressing on after equalising, still look vulnerable at the back. And I'll go back to the goal now in a second, because I tweeted in the first half. I tweeted it was the 5th game in a row the defense looked shaky, and anytime teams tended to break on us, you have that fear. And even last night had the same fear. And like, I asked Carla about it after the game, and she was sort of saying the spacings between the players were just way too big. And I thought with Megan Connolly in the centre of midfield, she doesn't get a lot of the limelight because all she does is sort of break the ball up. I thought they were better in terms of having someone holding there, but to be caught open by that for that Turkey goal, like, you could see it coming from a mile away. And then when the ball is played low across the box, she's just going to say thank you very much and slides it past Courtney. Courtney couldn't really do much about it.
How much of a difference did Caitlin Hayes make over the last maybe game and a half? Because I know we've had different opinions on her over the last couple of years, but there was one tackle in particular, I think late in the first half, when against Slovenia when they probably should have had a shot on goal. 3 or 4 players converging, but it was Hayes' challenge that came in. And I don't think for one second I don't think you can disagree that we look more solid when she's at the back than we have when she hasn't been at the back. Now, I don't know if that's anyone else's fault, but she just seems to have this take no nonsense attitude that just seems to be right for where we want to be.
So I understand why she's gone with Stapleton and Patton in terms of the way she's gone with things in the last couple of games. But for me, I had a sense of a little bit more of a calm. Yes, the goal came so quickly after halftime, and people would say, "Yeah, what I'm going to say now is probably a little bit a bit unjust." But I was a lot more calmer in the second half against Turkey defensively with Hayes on the pitch than I was in the first half. Like, the thing about it is at times it's, yes, she's a physical presence, but she reads the game very well for me, and she understands what she's doing. And I even thought last night she was brilliant. And like, you see what she can do back there. I like when she fell out of the squad. Well, not necessarily when she fell out of the lineup. Like, I was surprised she didn't start the first game against Turkey and Tala, and then the biggest surprise for me came when Megan Campbell got injured in the warm-up in Skoda, and then she decided to put Megan Connolly back at centre-back. And
that was my next question. If we had Hayes at centre-half against Slovenia the first day, do we avoid an embarrassing 4-0 defeat? Or at least the level of it? It might have been 1 or 2, but I don't think we get beat 4-0. And if we don't get beat 4-0 that day, I think we win and top the group.
So that's a difficult question, and that's, to say yes to it is probably throwing players on the bus. But nobody was good enough that night, and I don't think it was just defensively. I think it was midfielders coming back. It was everybody that night was so poor. And like, if you'd asked me at halftime, you could have taken off any of the 10 outfielders at halftime in Skoda, and I wouldn't have complained. I'd have said, yeah, no problem, because to be honest with you, it's probably one of the most, I don't want to say embarrassing, but it's one of the most horrific performances I've seen from an Ireland team in a long, long time. And the only player who probably come out of that game with any way of a bit of a stock increase was Abby Larkin, when Abby Larkin come on in the second half and scored. It's the only player for me that sort of had any impact. Like, even if you look up top, like, we created a lot of chances in that game. Amber Barra and Kira Crusoe. Kira Crusoe playing wide didn't work. Kira sort of didn't know what she was doing. It was just more of a sense of so many players nearly out of position or trying to fit players in. I definitely think if Caitlin Hayes plays that game, we still lose that game.
I'm not.
Would we have lost the 4-0? It's an interesting question. The one thing when I look back to that night is, I would have loved to see it, and we didn't necessarily see it as much as, I think she went down once, but Courtney Brosnan just actually was take a knee a couple of times, take the yellow card, take the time wasting yellow card, and just be like, okay, let's. But it was just as though the goals came so quick early in the first half. Trade them there, we just didn't know what to do, and it was like it was nearly like a women's team playing against an under-17s team. That's the sort of assessment that I would say of that night in Cooper, and everything that could have went wrong did.
Let's talk about last night, because I think Slovenia, they caught us in the hop over there the first day. We weren't 4-0 worse than them, but they took their chances. We didn't take any, and that's what cost us ultimately at the end of the competition. Last night, though, we could have had 10. I didn't see the game last night. I was otherwise engaged, but I did watch it back today in full. And easily we could have had 10 goals. Like, there was chance after chance. Carusa had one that she turned on. There was a couple into the keeper's hands that we should have done better with. Megan Connolly had an effort from the edge of the box that she just couldn't keep down. Like, there was chance after chance after chance blocked out by a fairly resolute and organised Slovenian defence. But, like, 4 goals, I'd be annoyed if I was Carla Ward this morning. I'd be annoyed that we didn't take our chances. We didn't try anything different. Like, what's your thoughts on, like, what do you think about how Ireland played? Like, you said to me off air earlier that it was the best performance under Carla Ward. I can't disagree with that, because it was different. It wasn't maybe as disciplined as we've seen in terms of approach, but it was good in terms of getting the ball forward and creating chances. We must have had a dozen chances last night.
It was chaotic. That's the best way to describe it last night. It was chaotic. So, like, some of the chances were half chances, could have done better with some of them. 100% agree with you. The one frustrating thing for me from last night was still showing the defensive vulnerability in terms of teams breaking on us, but with the chaotic, that's going to happen. Second thing for me was the amount of needless crosses that were going to nobody in the box. That was the biggest frustrating thing for me. And there was a time in the first half, Denise O'Sullivan took a wonderful touch and then played the ball. And we just looked at times, rather than playing the simple ball forward, even in around the edge of the box, they tried that little fancy flick over the top to get in behind. And it was just, they were, biggest thing I took out of it, I think they were trying too hard to score goals. And I think that's probably one of the things. And like, don't get me wrong, the keeper made one or two great saves. Made a lovely save from Emily Murphy. I thought we were good. I thought Slovenia were probably a little bit lucky in terms of defensively with yellow cards. I thought there was some really, really hefty challenges that early on that maybe didn't get yellows that should have.
Katie McCabe, she seemed to come in.
Yeah, but I am gonna turn around and say that Katie McCabe is lucky as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Katie McCabe is lucky. Is it a red card? Some refs might have sent her off, but it's definitely a yellow card. It's definitely a yellow card for the sort of stamp out. But that was frustration from her. And the other annoying thing that came out of that game is Anna Patton is now suspended for the first leg of the playoff because of that yellow card she got from the pushing and shoving towards the end. Absolute needless. And it's one of them that you're like, there is no need for that. Walk away from it. We had 5 players on yellow cards where you're in that game and you're sort of thinking all of it, 3 of them, 4 of them starting again. You're like, we don't need that. There was no need for it. There was sort of, I think, realistically, it's definitely going to be a confidence booster for Ireland, that performance, because they've had some really, really poor performances. But the problem is they need to start learning to put the ball in the net. They need to put the ball in the net. I like the fact that she went with a slightly different system, going with Ciara and Saoirse. I like that, and I thought Abby Larkin was very good. I know you were talking a lot about Emily Murphy. I thought Emily Murphy was very good. It was very, very good as well last night. But like, there was even times where you could see the Irish centre backs or the Irish even fullbacks sort of pushing up really, 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 really far into the Slovenian half because we were so far in control of possession at large periods. Like, if you didn't know the scoreline and you looked and seen all the chances that Ireland had, I'd agree with you. You turn around and say, should have scored an awful lot more. Is 1-0 good enough? It's a better result in terms of performance, but to score only 1 goal in that game to me is disappointing.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. I think it's, given the amount of possession we had, the territory we had, the domination, because we completely dominated them, apart from tiny spells here and there where they had a couple of breakaways. They weren't really in the game. And I think when you compare this campaign to the one Eileen Gleeson had, 2 years ago now at this level, and I'm not trying to say Eileen was better than Carla, because I think it's a very different situation, but I think I'm disappointed with it. I think we should have topped the group. Anything less than topping the group is disappointing, to be quite honest with you.
I'd agree with you. The one thing I will say is, as well, we need to be realistic in our sense. In, like, if you look at that Ireland squad right now, a large chunk of them players that were playing last night are either just approaching 30 or 30 odd. Like, there's a lot of players there with a lot of miles on that clock, and your concern would be is have they got too many miles on the clock? Like, you look at Denise O'Sullivan's now 32, Katie McCabe is 30 this year. Like, a lot of players who've been on the go for a long, long time. And I thought Katie's had a very good international window, considering she's played so many games this season. Like, she hasn't had her
last week off. Okay, effectively, like, she was partying all last week. We saw the video evidence. Like,
she arrived in the Ireland squad on Tuesday. But like,
she was still hungover. Probably still drunk? Do you play her if you're Carla Ward when she comes in that condition? Whether she's able to play or not, you're going to Turkey. You're fairly confident you should be dominating Turkey as well. Do you leave her on the bench for that game, or do you play her from the start?
See, the problem here is in hindsight, it'd be an amazing thing. If you turned around and said we leave Katie out, there's no doubt you would have brought Katie on at halftime in that game. Like, I would say Carla's not playing her without having a good talk with the FAI, the likes of the dietary teams and the medical teams, because that's the one thing she was emphasizing on Thursday to us, is that like they've been working closely with Katie since she arrived, and she did talk about, you know, if she did, the decision hadn't been made on Thursday because they were going to see how Katie was as well, and like if it's a case of, you know, we hadn't have been needing results the way we needed them, or we had been similar to maybe where Eileen was in the last League B campaign, she definitely doesn't play.
Yeah.
The good thing from the FAI point of view is the FAI have already turned around and said Katie is not going to America. They've already turned around and said Katie is not going to America. Carla Ward's talked about the burnout, and she's talked about that sort of things from a Katie viewpoint. But it's a difficult one because you need results. Like, if you don't need results, the obvious answer straight away is yes. If I'm being honest, then my situation is like, if you're looking at it from the outside, like, if you turn around and say, what I would have probably liked to do is, if we could have turned around and said, Katie, listen, don't come to Turkey. We'll see you on Sunday. We'll see you on Saturday in Cork. Have a couple of days to rest. But then if that happens and then Ireland don't get the result in Turkey, you know, people will be out and blame Carla Ward even worse than there was. Like, there's no doubt Turkey was a get out of jail free card. It was a poor performance. Got lucky at the end. Like, when have we ever seen an Irish manager make a triple sub where you're bringing on Saoirse Noonan, Ciara Caruso, and Emily Murphy in one go?
Yeah,
never.
Yeah.
You know, never see that.
Up, like, do you know what I mean? It was crazy, but it worked in the end. Emily Murphy, let's talk about her for a moment, because I mentioned at the top of the show, I've always had a question mark about, because I haven't seen enough of her. I wasn't familiar with her, but she was away in the States in college. I think she was in Wake State University in America, and I just didn't see enough of her. And then when the glimpses we got, albeit only a handful of minutes here and there, I just didn't see the quality until this week's game, because I just thought last night, for me, she was the best player on the pitch for Ireland. She was go forward ball. She was attacking. She was focused on the goal or getting a cross in for the entire 90 minutes. And I just thought she was excellent for her spell in the game. She took her goal really well on Friday night. She's got to be happy with this window. It really has given her a genuine place in the squad, in my opinion.
Yes, and the biggest thing that I will say in this situation for me, it's and Carla spoke about this. She looks as though, since going to Newcastle, she's playing with a bit of confidence. She's playing with someone who knows what she can do and how she can play. She looks as though she's playing with that bit of confidence. Like, even the way she took the goal on Friday when the defender sort of slipped heading in it, just to let it bounce and just strike it. She looked as though she was playing with confidence, wasn't afraid to take on defenders, wasn't afraid to sort of do it. And like, when you look back at that, when she was thrown in that League A campaign, like, I was even sort of being like, I'm not sure here. I'm not sure if she's good enough. I'm not sure if she's international standard. But I thought she done very well. I thought she was superb, and I wasn't surprised at all when she was given the Sky Player of the Match last night. You'd be probably saying if she didn't get it, it'd be a little bit strange. But like, she's someone who's definitely come on. And like, even I spoke to Saoirse Noonan last night about Carla Ward and Carla Ward's management, and like, Saoirse was telling us about how when she wasn't in the initial squads, the conversation she had with Carla, explaining what she needed to do and sort of working with her to get better to where she's getting better. And you can definitely see how Emily's sort of fitting into that mold under Carla Ward. And it seems as though the players, they understand what she wants to do. Like, when have we ever seen an Ireland manager, especially women's manager, want to play 4-3-3? We're so used to having either a straight five across the back, or realistically 3-5-2, where we know the wing backs are going to defend an awful lot. And I think Murphy's definitely put her hand up to say, you know, I think I can play that position. I think Gabby Larkin as well on the other side was superb. I think the two wingers were very good, and there's a lot of positives to come out of that game in Cork. A lot of positives. I don't know if you, because obviously with the fact of you watched it back today, I don't know if you've read much of the stuff going around.
No.
Saoirse Noonan's the first player to play international soccer on the ground as well as playing Gaelic football in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. It's a great stat.
Yeah, and score as well. It must have been. You said you spoke to her after the game. I know she'd been on this show before during her Shelburne era, and what was her mood like last night? She must have been fairly ecstatic. It's kind of like Roy of the Rovers stuff, really. That might be that reference over your head, but it's comic book. It's comic book stuff, really.
Absolutely, and she sort of gave a lot of credit to the move to Celtic in the sense of she says she's played double the amount of games this season that she had last year. She says she's got to play Champions League against the likes of Real Madrid, Chelsea, play against players that are a lot better, that she needs to be better. And she talked about how, the confidence that she's gotten from these sort of things. And even with Carla Ward wanting to throw her in on Friday, she knows that when she gets an opportunity in an Ireland jersey, you have to take. And I wouldn't mind. She was talking about the goal, and she was also talking about other chances she had to take as well. And she was still conscious that probably could have had more. And like, even the funny thing is, if you look back at the goal, and I know we were praising her a minute ago, but herself and Emily Murphy sort of collided for the initial ball into the box, and it looked as though the chance was going to be completely wasted. And then Murphy does well to recycle it out to Stapleton, and then the cross comes in. But it was a really nice header from Noonan. And like, it's mad to think that's only her second international goal. I think she's 8 caps now, and it's only 2 goals from her.
3.5 years between international goals. Like, it's for a striker. In theory, you'd think, well, that's an awful long drought, but she's only really played a handful of minutes.
She's only started, like, I think
3 games.
I'm not sure if that's a second or third international start. Question is, do you know who her other international goal came against?
Georgia, 11-0.
You probably have it up in front.
I may have been doing research earlier today. I might have been struggling to answer that maybe 5-6 hours ago, but Georgia in the 11-0 win. It's the only other start she's had, I think. I could be wrong on that now.
The only other one I can think of. Did she start against Zambia in the build-up?
No, she came on as a sub against Zambia, or maybe I have it here.
You could be right.
No, she came on against Zambia. She played a half against Zambia. I'm not sure if it's first half or second half. I'm just double checking here. She started against Zambia, came off, replaced by number 9 Amber Barrett, who scored 2 goals that day. So yeah, she's had a decent enough run on the bench, and it's great to see her getting her chance. She's another one I probably would have had question marks about whether she was good enough at international level, because she never quite seemed to get the rub of the green from any manager, whether it was Vera or Eileen. She just couldn't quite seem to get on the pitch, and I suppose last night was the first time we've really seen it in a proper competitive game where she got an opportunity. Because let's face it, the Georgia game where she scored that 9-0 game, not really, you could have put anybody out. You could have put any League of Ireland women's team out against Georgia and they'd have been competitive, So you couldn't read too much into that. We bet them 20-0 in aggregate. So like, you take that as you want.
The funny thing is, like, when you look back at that, when you look at Noonan, like, even when Carla Ward first took over, she wasn't in the initial squad for the first 2 games, and there was a lot of clamour because she was scoring goals at Celtic that she should have been in. And like, even at that, a new manager comes in, you're not in the squads, the first camp, you take that sort of a bit of a, I'm not here, I should be here. But she said, and she was honest, she said, I worked on what Carla said, and she took that feedback on. And I think the biggest thing is Ward's openness to say, okay, this is what I think you need to do. This is what I think you need to get to. I think that's probably helped Noonan as well. And like, a lot of credit has to go to her for continuing to push, because it can be very, how would you say, disheartening as well, especially if you're scoring club goals. Like, the other side of it as well is a lot of people talking about Emily Whelan at Glasgow City, who's doing very well, but isn't seeming to get a look in either. And like, it's very disheartening for them sort of players if you're doing well for your club, but you're not getting that look in. And so to see her come in and just to repay the start was superb at the goal. But I thought she was very good on Friday as well, with Ciara Cruiser playing just off her. I thought she was very good in that system on Friday, and I wasn't surprised to see both herself and Ciara starting that game.
I'd prefer to see them the opposite way around. I think Carusa can cause damage and she puts more pressure on the defenders than maybe the other forwards we have available, Amber or Saoirse or anyone else in the squad, to be honest. I like Carusa as that leading 9, and I'd play Saoirse off her because Saoirse is a more natural finisher potentially than Carusa is. Carusa's big and she gets in and she'll get her head on something, or she'll cause trouble, or she'll lean into a player and draw a foul. I don't think Saoirse is able to do that. I'd prefer to see them switched. But there's a few players we haven't seen a lot of in this campaign that I want to talk to. I want you to tell me about your thoughts on how they've matured over the last 2 years. And one of them in particular is Tyler Toland. We've seen Tyler at her best. We've seen her out of the squad. We've seen her have a row with Vera and be dropped for a couple of years. She's still only young. What's she, 23 maybe?
About 24.
Yeah, and like she barely seen the pitch in this campaign. Is that a worry for her at this stage of the career? Like, has she a club at the moment? Blackburn Rovers, I believe, are gone to the wall. So
the club situation at the minute, I don't know what the story is, but I will tell you this now. Even if Blackburn didn't go to the wall, I would have expected her to have moved on, especially with the changes that happened in Blackburn this year. She's been very well. She's done very well for Blackburn. The one thing I will say when it comes to Tyler, she's played a couple of games in this camp. And Carla sort of mixed and matched things. The biggest thing for her, it's not like when she wasn't in the squad at all. Whereas with Carla sort of mixing and matching things, like she's played different midfielders, she's played different sides of things. Like you look at Tyler Toland, she's played 172 minutes in the first 5 games. She played 172 minutes. So, like you look at that, then say compare that. Take last night out of the equation. Before last night, Megan Connolly played 193. Rusha Littlejohn had played 100. Had played 220. Like she's played a lot. Marissa Shiva 320. She's played a lot of different people in midfield. I don't think Carla Ward is sort of set on who's best or who's going to do that job in midfield for. I still think Tyler's improving. She's still getting better. The more she plays at club level in the championship, I think she'll continue to grow and continue to even get better even more. I just think it's difficult in the centre of midfield because it's always going to be Denise O'Sullivan, and the question is, who's the other two going to be? If she goes with 2 sitting, Tyler has a chance. If she goes at only 1 and 1 slightly further advanced, then it's more difficult because you're sort of thinking you've got Megan Connolly, Rusha Littlejohn, and Tyler Toland sort of competing for that one position.
Do you have Jessie Stapleton in that discussion as well? You like her as a centre half, though?
No, I don't think she will ever play midfield for Ireland again.
Oh, really? That's a big statement.
I don't think she will ever. I think if she continues to go the way she's going, she will only play centre back for Ireland, and that's the sort of vibe that I'm getting. It's that they see her as a centre back only, and that's it. Now, the one thing I will say is I don't think Jessie's had her best couple of games for Ireland. The last couple of games for Jessie haven't been her best in an Ireland shirt. Herself and Anna Patton, for me, it's not worked properly the way it should have worked this season in this campaign. But for me, Jessie is the sort of player that if you were to turn around to me and say, of the sort of newer kids on the block, who's the next player to get to 100 caps? You're sort of talking Jessie, Abby Larkin. They're the two that you're looking at as them sort of players to get towards 100 caps. But I can see Jessie Stapleton sort of next 10 years being in and around the centre-back position.
Let's look at that race to 100 caps because there's a few players approaching it. At the moment, Katie McCabe has 97 caps as far as our records.
She's 98. She was a 98 cap last night.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'll have to double check that. But 97 we have her as. There probably is 98 in there. But there was a couple of games where we're not quite sure if there was caps awarded or not for them. I know we've had this.
So there's herself. Rusha's on 89.
Yeah.
They've been the next 2.
Megan Connolly is the next highest.
I'm gonna make a statement here, and I'm not being critical here when I say this. I'm not 100% convinced Rusha Littlejohn gets to 100.
No, I don't think so either. I don't think she gets past 89. If I'm honest, I think I don't know if she is of the quality anymore to be in the squad. And I've probably said this on the show a few times. I think she, at her peak, she was one of our best players, 100%. Is she at her peak at the moment? I don't think anybody, probably including herself, would try and say she is. I think the reason she's in the League of Ireland is probably because she didn't have an option anywhere else. Maybe that's a bit harsh. Maybe that's not true. But my interpretation would be that a player with her pedigree, with her quality, with only a familial link to Ireland, only comes to Ireland for Shamrock Rovers because of the history of the club in general, not necessarily the women's club, but the club in general. And I don't think she comes to Ireland for any other club or any other reason, if that makes sense. Has that been a bit harsh?
It's an interesting observation. She may have had other options, but they may not be the type of options that she wanted. You know what I mean? And that's the other side of it as well. And when you're looking at other players as well, there could be some others within Ireland who end up without a club, who are without a club, that could struggle to get a sort of level that they want to get as well. So I think it's an interesting off season, especially I think there's 3 players in the Ireland squad.
I have to say though, to her credit, she chose to come to Ireland and followed through with it, and seems to be enjoying her football, seems to be playing well. She's influencing games. She's scoring some absolutely cracking goals. She's had some audacious.
I observed. I was standing by. She was having a bit of a conversation with Tony O'Donoghue from RTE in Turkey pre-game, and they were talking about coffee spots where she's living. You know, she's got the real landed understanding of where she is, and by the sounds of things, she was talking quite positively about spots where she goes for a coffee and stuff like that. And like, the thing about it is, and make no illusions of it, whether she had offers or not from anywhere else, she doesn't need to come to the League of Ireland. She's successful off the field in terms of what she's doing. So, like, for her to come to the League of Ireland, yes, she's probably not dominating the games in terms of box to box, but you never really expected that with her in terms of because of her where she's at in terms of her body. But she's given us some highlight moments, and I think that goal against Galway is going to continue to be one of the biggest ones that's gonna stand out for a long time. Like, even on her debut, putting a free kick into the top corner, there's been so many positive things about Rusha Littlejohn.
But we've seen players on the men's side and the women's side come from abroad, back to the League of Ireland and just not be able to hack it. Like, let's be honest, Damien Duff played 11 games for Shamrock Rovers when he came back. His body just couldn't hold up to it. Damien Delaney at Cork and Waterford, he ended up just throwing his hat at it because he just wasn't able to hack it anymore. And there are 2 examples. Apologies to those 2, but they're probably the 2 more high-profile ones. We've seen plenty of players fail to adjust to life in the League of Ireland after playing in the top or second tier in the UK. And I think fair play to her for coming. I think she's shown that she's prepared to get in and settle into the environment, but also to show up on the pitch. And she's been excellent for Shamrock Rovers, but I don't think she has it for Ireland anymore. I think she'll keep showing up as long as she's picked, and the very best of luck to her. And if she's called, she'll do a job. Is she going to dictate a game at international level again?
Probably not.
Maybe against maybe against. But is she going to make an impact in a playoff against some of the teams we're facing in the playoffs in a couple of weeks' time, or a couple of months' time? And realistically, you're looking at Austria, Iceland, Portugal, or Denmark.
No, Belgium rather than Portugal. Belgium and Portugal.
That hasn't been updated since last night. The league table on UEFA. That's disappointing from UEFA, but yeah, Belgium beat Portugal. Was it 3 or 4-0 last night? So they go ahead. So Belgium, like, are any of those games that you'd look at and go, yeah, we can definitely take them? I don't think so. I think Belgium is probably.
Austria's probably the one where you'll say they're the only one out that not to qualify for the Euros. But the biggest thing is it's going to be over 2 legs. More than likely, we'll be away from home in the second leg. So it's all going to be down to what happens in that first leg. And I'm going to say this now, and I don't mean to sound bad to the FAI, but I just hope they don't do what they done last night and go to Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Like, going to a stadium like that for 9,000 fans, 9,433 fans in Páirc Uí Chaoimh last night. Like, for such a big stadium, like, if you want to go outside of Dublin, you know, you have to be looking at Turner's Cross, even somewhere like an RSC, but you can't be going to a stadium that big and having that sort of crowd.
Park Equive have to pay for the ground, don't forget. But I think I like the idea, and there's such a Cork dynamic within that team. Like every week, you've got Denise O'Sullivan. Every time we play, you've Denise O'Sullivan. You've likelihood got Megan Connolly, and then the possibility of Saoirse. And there's a couple of other girls in and around that from the Rebel County as well. Like, do you mean sometimes we might
the last time they played in Park Equive, they were turning people away because it was sold out.
Yeah, but that was France.
France was a nothing game as well, though. It was nothing. We'd already assured the playoff. We were guaranteed to finish bottom. There was nothing even at stake. And like the problem is it's timing as well.
It's the novelty of it. If you brought that game to Medici Park, what's Medici Park? 5,000-6,000?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like Thomond Park in Limerick. Okay, it's not a League of Ireland ground, but it's still able to hold probably a good 12, 13, 14,000 people.
You have to just to remember, and then there was people saying like last night about the terraces being empty. They're not allowed to use the terraces for UEFA games. I think it was 20,000 is the capacity, but like 9,000 there, it's not great. I prefer to have had 6,500, 7,000 in a sold out Turner's Cross if you're going to go to Cork for such a small crowd. Like instead of having.
I love that we're talking about women's international games and a small crowd of 9,000. God, I remember, and we've talked about it at length on this show, when it was literally friends and family, and you knew everybody in the stand in Richmond Park.
I can nearly give you. I was only reflecting back to this, thinking about something last night, right? I was looking at the media list on the way in. Nearly every single Cork journalist wanted to be there. I think there was 30 odd or something on it. And I was looking back and I was thinking to myself, when Sue Rowland done her last game in charge of Ireland, again, last competitive game in charge of Ireland against Montenegro, there was myself and Emma Duffy from the 42 in the press box. And it's like, now, same thing again, crowd-wise, very poor. Even if you go back to the first game after the protest in Liberty Hall, I think there was about 1,000 fans at that game in Tallaght Stadium. Like, the dynamic is changing for the right reasons, which is great. But like the other side of football as well is it's a very young audience, so you have to be very clever with where you stage games for the fact of kids in school, leaving cert, starting, all that sort of stuff has a massive impact on especially on crowds for a women's game.
That's my point. If you bring it around there are enough grounds around the country where you could accommodate 5,000 to 6,000, 8,000 people. Sometimes you might have to go and look at a Gaelic venue, fair enough, or a rugby venue. But there are stadiums out there that can cater for that volume, and it gives those young girls, especially in those regions, the opportunity to see this for themselves. And you never know what that might spark in a player who maybe is out playing a little bit with her local club or whatever, or her school, and all of a sudden she's like going, I could do that. That could be me. And they might never make it to a green shirt, but they might play for Galway, or they might play for Sligo, they might play for Treaty or Cork City. Like, that's what we need to be looking at.
Do you know what I'd love? Regions. Right? Do you know what I'd love? I'm not 100% sold on constantly bringing competitive games around the country, but I'd love for the FAI to do is, even if they had one friendly a year and they just picked a different venue, a different county, and they were in. Because it's more difficult with competitive games. But even if they had one friendly a year, at least, and they just at home, and they just said, okay, it's got to be in this county, it's going to be here. And you're right, go and visit these different places. Go and give women's football exposure to this. And the problem is you're at a stage right now where if you've got a big nation, it's more difficult. But like, there's no reason why with a friendly game you couldn't necessarily bring it around the country and use some other stadiums, like, because realistically, there's a cost effect in renting out Tallaght. There's a cost effect in playing in the Aviva. It's not as if they're two stadiums that are just going to be free for them anyway. I just think that the choice of game and the timing of the game is really important to whether or not they get a big crowd out to these games. But listen, I think overall last night for me there was a lot of positives. I take a lot of positives away from it. We're into the playoff draw. The draw's on Friday. We'll know who we have on Friday. Noon Irish time, and we can plan from there, understand what it's going to be. But under no illusions, it's not going to be easy. Just to give a bit of a breakdown for people listening, what happens next? Why is this important? So the World Cup qualifiers are going to run very similar to the Nations League qualifiers in the sense of the way we had it working for in the Nations League for the Euros. It was the top 2 from every group in League A qualified for the Euros. But for the World Cup, it's only going to be, I think it's the top it's only going to be the top 1 team in each group automatically qualifies. And then it's going to be a case that the rest then go into playoffs because there's only 11 spots available for Europe in terms of direct qualification to the Euros, while there is also that one additional place that's available through the playoff, the second playoff, which takes place the February before the World Cup. So being in League A is obviously, with seeding wise for playoffs and stuff like that for World Cup, it's much more important.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's all about seeding for the next round to qualify and get an easier draw, so that it makes you more likely to qualify ultimately at the end of that. Just to go back to the bringing a game around the grounds of the country, and I think Cork works because there's a few Cork girls in the squad. Looking at the squad at the moment, there's very little regional representation because there's a lot of non-Irish born players in the squad at the moment. So realistically, you're looking at potentially Heather Payne when she's back from injury coming in from a Galway point of view. You have the 2 girls from Donegal and Tyler and Amber. Leanne Kiernan is Cavan. So like the showgrounds in Sligo is probably a good central spot, that because you do need that local interest. And
I love how you picked the showgrounds.
You draw a line between those 4 locations, and you're going to end up in Sligo, like Galway.
Yeah, I know. I wouldn't mind a trip to Sligo or a trip to Galway.
Sligo's a good ground. It's got a good atmosphere. It's got 4,500-5,000 seats, which is the kind of number we're looking at here. But you could again, and you got to look at the growth in women's football in Sligo. 7 years ago. And I know I'm completely biased here because I was involved in setting up Sligo Rovers back in the day when they started under 17s team. But you got to look at the reality here. 7 years ago, they had a schoolgirls league up to about under 18 maybe, and then nothing. They had a team in the university in what's now ATU. It wasn't that strong. It had been maybe 15 years earlier when they won intervarsities kind of on the regular. They hadn't really won much in the last 8 to 10 years. They're starting to get competitive again now at the moment, but that's because the local junior league started 2 years ago. I think they've had 2 full seasons of that. You see it yourself in Glenview reaching the quarterfinals of the Amateur Cup. That was unheard of a couple of years ago, that a Sligo team even existed, never mind getting to that stage. And yeah, we can argue the toss about the quality of the Amateur Cup versus maybe the elite level, and the fact that no amateur team has even scored a goal, as far as I can remember, in as long maybe one.
I think I brought that up. Was it 2009 pre-COVID? Was it? Because I remember saying that to you last year, and I got a bit of stick over that. It was pre-COVID.
Yeah, but like that's just the reality of it, and so we need to look at, like, even I'm looking. Obviously, we feature as many leagues as we can on FinalWhistle.ie, and we're adding leagues at the moment ahead of the kind of the next year's winter season and this year's summer season. The Donegal League, and that's probably where some of the stick came from, if memory serves me right, during one game where we got criticised for stuff we said on the show. But the Donegal League is only 9 aside.
It was a Dublin club.
I
won't name the player.
I got a comment from Donegal at one stage. That's only 9 aside. So you're asking them to jump from a 9 aside league to play 11 aside against the National League team, and that's just not practical. But anyway, we're going to find out about that tomorrow when the draw for the first round comes into play, and we've got some tantalizing fixtures. Obviously, everybody's in the draw. I think this year it's a nice round number. 12 league teams, 4 from the Amateur Cup. Leaves us with a straight 16. Athlone did get a bye last year because of winning the cup the year before. Shells don't get that benefit this year, but it's going to be interesting.
I'm going to get shot for this, right?
Who do you want in the first round?
I'd love to see Shells against Athlone. Paymount against Shamrock Rovers. I'd love to see Galway. I'd love to see a lot of League of Ireland teams. Galway, Wexford, Treaty, Cork. I'd love to see a lot of League of Ireland teams getting against each other, and actually, for the fun of it. Just because I don't mean to sound bad, and I don't want to diss the FAI Cup, but I know they're the best 2 teams in the league, in Athlone and Shells, but I don't really want Athlone versus Shells for the 4th year in a row in the final of the FAI Cup.
It wouldn't be great. But then that's a 50% chance that they'll be on different sides of the draw when it ultimately gets to that stage. Who do the non-league teams want? Do you want the big fish? Do you want to take a Shells down to your patch and take them on Athlone, or do you want?
I was winding someone up from Newbridge Town the other day saying they were going to get Shells in Talca Park. I think realistically for them, no matter who they get, and I was being realistic to them, and when I said last year, because I looked at last year's and we look at Terranure getting beaten 6-0 by Sligo Rovers. Like, the gap between the bottom teams, even in the League of Ireland, is massive, and like, no matter if they draw any league team, it's going to be very difficult for them. And I think for the non-league teams, I think they'd love just to have a home game. But then again, you look at Terranure. Terranure got a home game not last year, the year before, against Cork City, and played it in Pats. So is it possible realistically for them all to? Like, I know Whitehall played Athlone at home a couple of years ago. Like, I think they just want the home draw. Any of the non-league teams.
Yeah, but again, sometimes you want the little bit of a fairy tale and going away to a Talca Park or a Dalymount Park and getting to play there, regardless of what the result might be. I'd love to see a team getting through. I'd love to see a non-league team getting through. It might take two of them being drawn against each other for that to happen, but it would be nice. The other side of me wants them all out in the first hurdle, and then you just down to decent games from there on in, that you're not going to get a 5 or 6-0 hammering as obviously as
the problem is, I don't want to be disrespectful to some of the League of Ireland clubs, but the way things are going at the minute, we could easily see a hammering for some of the League of Ireland clubs, the way performances are going. I'm going to put you on the spot here because we're talking about this sort of stuff. In the last 50 minutes or so, the nominations for FAI Player of the Month for May have come out. I don't know if you've had a chance to see them. And my tweet that I sent, yes, for May, there was nearly
3 rounds again. 3 rounds again.
3 rounds again. My tweet on Friday seems to have worked.
Oh,
because from Turkey, when Sligo Rovers tweeted to say that Bonnie McKiernan was nominated for a Sligo Rovers Player of the Month, I tweeted and said she should have been nominated for a League of Ireland Player of the Month.
Yep.
So your nominations are Maddie Gibson, Kenzie Anthony, Rebecca Cook, Bonnie McKiernan, Madison McGuan, and Ella Malloy.
I think that's about as good as you're going to get. The only one that you could maybe consider putting in alongside that group would be Flacini from Treaty, who has been pretty much top of the league. She didn't get nominated. She got nominated last month.
She got nominated last month.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we're seeing another Treaty player nominated. We're seeing another.
We did get corrected last week or the week before when we talked about her being 16. She's only 15. She might be 16 now, but she was only 15 at the time we said that. So apologies for aging.
She's the sort of player that I wouldn't be at all shocked if she ends up in the Ireland under 19s next year and doesn't necessarily play 17s. I wouldn't be shocked if she gets called into 19s so young, because she's playing so regularly in the League of Ireland. As much as it'd be an advantage for James Scott to have her, I think Dave Connell's side could probably do with her as well, and she'd do a decent job for them, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a fairly solid selection. I'm just looking through the results here. Athlone Town, 3 wins, 10 goals scored, no goals conceded. You'd have to have at least one of those players. And I know these kind of get shared around. A lot of these selections are slightly political in that you're going to have players most times from 6 different teams. You're not going to have 2 players from the one team. And I get that has to happen, but for me, I think there's probably a couple of players from Athlone could feel a little bit hard done by there. Maybe Izzy Groves could have been in with a shout there. Their goalkeeper could definitely have been in with a shout. There's a few girls. I think Roisin Malloy, the impact she's made since she came back from injury. I know she's only played a little bit of the early games in the month, but I think she's had an impact when she came back, particularly in that win against Sligo Rovers. I think she got the first goal in that game, if I'm not mistaken. That might have been only her first start of the month, which probably means she's been ruled out of that. But I think there's 4 or 5 girls in that loan could realistically have been included. 2 or 3 from Treaty as well. I did see their goalkeeper on social media this week. They've been doing this. Their social media is brilliant. Treaty's social media is absolutely class, and the work that's going on behind the scenes there with their media team is great. I know we've said it a couple of times on the show, but they do this thing with, I can't even describe it. It's just dropping sticks. Have you seen it on TikTok?
Oh, yeah, I've seen.
So they get a different player and the stick drops at various intervals and they try and catch it. We won't talk about the results for Lisa Toomey. It was not positive. They had to actually put up a little thing on on the thing saying, we promise she can catch a ball because she couldn't catch the fallen poles.
Right. Now I'm gonna say you have me going scrolling through Twitter to actually look and see if I can find this video, because I didn't see the video, but I know what you're talking about in terms of the actual.
Yeah, no, she didn't perform well in that at all. But that's good, because we see that she is actually a little bit human, because she's been excellent for Treaty between the posts this year.
Reckon you're gonna give Madison McGrath a bit more praise here. She's actually the Ireland she's actually still eligible for Ireland under 16s. She's the captain of the Ireland under 16s.
If she's 15, she would be Ireland. That's how that works.
But that's just even thinking about
it's nuts.
I would like to see us utilize players like that and either skip 16s and fast track into 17s, have the extra year in 17s, or even go to 19s, because I think she's someone who benefit an awful lot from that sort of level, and could drop in and out between them. But it's scary to think a 15-year-old nominated for Player of the Month, and the thing about it is her nomination is well deserved.
She could actually win that. That's the thing. However, I think for me, the performance Bonnie McKiernan put in Sligo Rovers win against Peamount, the draw against Shamrock Rovers, for me was just,
and the win against Peamount.
Yeah, both, but particularly against Shamrock Rovers, she was like, I said it to you straight away. I think I put out a tweet the next day going, they asked for team of the week suggestions.
Bonnie McKiernan 1, Bonnie McKiernan 2, Bonnie McKiernan 3.
100%. She was class, and I don't think any other players had that impact on a club this year in any one game. So for me, I think she's probably, I don't think she's going to get it because Sligo aren't doing so well. I think again, going to the politics of it, I'd
expect Mackenzie Anthony realistically to win that.
I agree with you, but I don't think she will. I don't think she will. I think these things get very political. I don't know who picks it. I have suspicions about who picks it, but I don't know who picks it. Who did you say?
So while we're here, while we're talking about Player of the Year awards or Young Player of the Month awards, the FAI have actually announced Senior Player of the Year and the Young Player of the Year in the last 40 minutes as well.
Okay.
Ciara Caruso has won Player of the Year, and Jessie Stapleton has won Young Player of the Year.
No arguments with that. Do we have the underage ones? Because I know Madison McGrath was nominated for under 16.
I don't think they. I think the only reason the FAI announced the senior player ones is because they would have to have presented the awards to them, where the rest of the awards are going. Because I know the FAI, the men's award was sort of announced yesterday, because the awards are going to be announced at the Ireland game, the men's game this week.
Okay. Yeah,
so I'd expect that it'll be then before we get a name on who's won.
Before we wrap up, let's talk for a minute about the fixtures for this weekend, because we are getting very close to that magic hour. We're probably going to go over at this stage, but we have that situation. Let's look at the games here. These are the fixtures for the weekend. 2 late games: Cliftonville and Peamount, and Galway United and Cork City. They play off at 5 o'clock. Everything else is at 3 p.m. on Saturday. Bows versus Linfield, DLR Waves versus Wexford, Shamrock Rovers versus Lisburn, Rangers, Sligo versus Shells, Treaty versus Glentoran, and finally Waterford versus Athlone Town. Let's take a look at the groups just so we know where they match up. Sligo Rovers, they take on Shelburne at home this weekend. The win was either team.
Just in terms of the games, I think I was speaking to someone yesterday, and I'm not sure if that Galway and Cork City game is going to be on. It's not going to be. I don't think it's going to be on LOI TV based off of what I was hearing.
Yeah, it's been moved to Moyne Villa, which is just outside in Headford. So it's a bit outside of Galway. So that was came out in an email today. I saw it anyway. So that's not going to be in M&DC Park. So again, it might not be an LOI TV. Your thoughts on these groups? Let's go through the groups one by one. Sligo
the FAI have confirmed it will be good because there was talk yesterday it wasn't going to be. So that's good. Groups. Group A: Sligo Rovers versus Shelburne, Bows versus Linfield. It's hard to see anything except maybe a Shells win here. A draw is enough to put them through. And then a draw would also give Sligo Rovers an outside chance of getting into the next stage as well. We need to have a little bit of a think about this, okay? If both of these games finish the draw,
it depends who scores more.
Say both of these games finish 0-0.
I actually think it goes to a coin toss. Because the rules are a coin toss. The records are the exact same. Head-to-head is the exact same. In the 1990 World Cup, I'm showing my age now, Ireland and Holland finished on 3 games, 3 draws, 1 goal scored. Was 2 goals scored? 2 goals scored, 2 goals conceded. They'd drawn 1-1 against each other, 3 points, and it was all level, identical records, and it was separated by a toss of the coin, and we finished second in the group on a coin toss. It seems unbelievable at that level, second in the group, but luckily for Holland, the third team went through as well, and they went through as one of the best third place finishers. So it didn't really matter. We were both going through. It was just a matter of who went to play Romania and who went to play, I think, Brazil at the time. I'm really showing my age now, but we beat Romania.
I'm not sure it will go down to that.
No, I don't think so.
I think Bowes will be Linfields, and I'd expect
that
Shells. I don't know. I'd expect Shells to probably win this game, but I can't imagine Shells are going to go full strength, considering they may not want to risk 1 or 2 players.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Sligo, I think Sligo will go full strength, because
you have to think what game is next week. Shells not alone is next week in the league.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. I think Sligo will go full strength. Shells won't, and if that happens, it probably evens this game up a bit more.
Yeah,
but
I think Sligo will be competitive. If Sligo can get ahead, it'll be very interesting. But I just think Shells will probably just come out on top in it.
Yeah, let's go to Group B. Shamrock Rovers, top of the table. I think they're pretty much guaranteed. It would take a huge result, maybe 6-0 defeat against Lisburn, for them not to go through, and Wexford beating DLR, which probably, based on form, might happen. So you got to fancy Shamrock Rovers to beat Lisburn.
I think it'll be
Wexford to beat DLR.
I think this group's probably going to be the most comfortable in this weekend. I think Shamrock Rovers will win comfortably, and I think Wexford will win comfortably.
Yeah. Group C, Peamount and Galway top of the table. Cliftonville and Cork City with it all to do this weekend. Cork City travel to Galway. Cliftonville host Peamount United. It'll take a 3-0 victory, 2-0 victory for Cliftonville to jump over Peamount. And
possible.
Cork would also need a 2-0 victory to go ahead of Galway.
I can't see Cork overturning. I can't see Cork beating Galway with 2 goals. Cliftonville, if they can frustrate Peamount early, grab a go ahead, I could see them potentially getting the result they need. But then again, the last 15 minutes against Cork City was woeful from a Cliftonville point of view. But it's Peamount away. Anything can happen when it comes to Peamount away from home. They haven't been amazing. I wouldn't be shocked if Peamount win this game comfortably, but then again, I wouldn't be shocked if they lose by a couple.
Yeah, interesting times ahead for the Peas. Group D, we've got Treaty hosting Glentoran in a top of the table clash. Glentoran already through. Treaty, all they've got to do is avoid defeat or hope that Waterford don't beat Athlone comfortably. Can you see Treaty holding on to this one? We didn't really fancy them to get through after round 1, but they had a big win.
It was more the fact that the permutations around 1 sort of destroyed them, with the fact that if the draw against Waterford sort of meant that they had to beat Athlone and then potentially going to have to beat Glentoran. But I don't think either of us sort of expected after 2 rounds that Athlone to be on 0 points. But when you're missing Kelly Brady and you're missing Matty Gibson in a game against Treaty, and then you make other changes as well, it's a little bit more difficult, even though Treaty didn't have Bella Flacchini. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Treaty United go absolute full strength here and try and win this game and win the group. I think this will be an entailing game of football. I think it'll be close, but it's probably one of the games of the weekend.
Absolutely, I'd have to agree with that. It's promises to be a fairly exciting weekend. Of course, I think all the games on LOI TV.
Yeah, they all are. I just double checked.
Worth checking out and getting yourself onto that and seeing whatever your favorite team is this weekend. Are you going to be at a game or watching a game yourself?
I haven't fully made my mind up yet as to where I'm going, but I will be at one of the 3 games in the capital this weekend. I just don't know where yet.
Yeah, I might make the trek down to Sligo, although I've said that a couple of weeks and I haven't quite made it. So just work tends to catch up with me on a Saturday afternoon this time of the year. I will try and get down to Sligo Rovers and see if we can get a bit of that game, maybe a bit of post-match for next week's show as well. Aaron, that's it for this week. Where are you off to on your Holly Bobs this week?
No Hollywops this week for a change. No
Back
more
to work
holidays.
next
No more
one.
holidays till October. Back to work tomorrow. No more holidays till October. We'll book a nice couple of days in and around that playoff game.
Again, you're letting UEFA dictate your life. I kind of love it and I kind of hate it, but it is what it is.
Do you know what? I was actually looking the other day. I'm toying with the idea of maybe having a long weekend over the next month, 6 weeks, and sort of scooting off the UEFA again and letting UEFA dictate me and heading to maybe Switzerland for 3 or 4 days and try and catch a couple of Euros games. I think football tends to control all my time off lately.
Well, I think if I was going to go anywhere, I think I'd be holding off till August and then maybe taking a look at where Athlone get in the Champions League and maybe taking 3 days there as well. So that could be an option. Yeah, that could be a shout.
It's not a bad show.
I do have a personal bit of a graw for the Champions League, and I think I don't like the structure now with the knockout. I'd prefer when it was 3 teams in the group and you got
the knockout was much better for us in the sense of if we were to go to it, it's probably a lot better for us.
Yeah, you get the full 4 games across 3 days. It's worth it, and then 2 days holidays, whatever in the middle. Listen, we leave it there. Thanks so much for joining me again this week, as always. Delighted to have you back in the Emerald Isle. And we'll be back next week to see who has got through, which 8 of the 15 possible teams are in the hat for the.
Okay, before you go.
Oh, go on.
Are we gonna have a shock? Yes or no?
Oh, I don't think so.
Okay. I'd agree with that.
If we're gonna see a shock,
If we're gonna see a shock, I think it's Sligo.
I think it's Cliftonville. I think if we see a shock, it's Cliftonville.
Is Cliftonville a shock though?
Cliftonville is a shock. Yeah, Cliftonville is a shock. I think Sligo or Cliftonville. I don't think Linfield would be a shock, and Bows wouldn't be a shock either. So, yeah, Sligo, Cliftonville potentially. Cork City, could Cork City pull it off? Could they beat Galway 2-0? I don't think they could. I can't see it. Not in Galway, even in Moyne Villa. I can't see it. Like, no. I'm famous last words. Phil Trill, you could put that on the notice board now on Saturday afternoon, and hopefully it does the business for you. But listen, we leave it there. Thanks for joining me again, Aaron. We'll be back with you again next week. Talk to you then.